We have a panel of speakers, two from academia, two from industry. So we'll start off by introducing each of the, I'll have at least the panelists introduce themselves. So,
starting with me. So, my name is Joao. I'm one of the academics. I think everyone knows that by now. So I'm from the Nova University of Lisbon in Portugal. I've been working mostly in consistency nowadays, from theory to practice, geo-replication, whatever. And like in the past, I've been doing other stuff like peer-to-peer. I think that also was apparent in our talk today. And I think that's it.
I'm David Greenberg. I work at 2 Sigma, where what I do is work on our distributed compute cluster and like the computational and storage requirements there.
My name is Annette Bieniusa. I'm a lecturer and researcher at the University of Kaiserslautern in Germany. First kind of touch with distributed and concurrent programming was my research on software transaction memory. And starting from this, I moved more into the distributed direction. And well, probably some of you have been to the talk that Chris and I gave on the Sucre project. So we're trying to get in touch with industry to feedback on the kind of research we're doing with CRDTs.
My name is Jordan West. I work over at Basho, spending most of my time working on the core distributed systems infrastructure of RICON. And most recently, I've been implementing some of Joao's research, which is what we spoke about today. And so obviously, I'm a big fan of us working closer together.
Excellent. So last year at RICON, kind of one of the topics of discussion that a lot of people really enjoyed was kind of bringing what we could do to get industry and academia kind of working together a little bit better. So there were a variety of recommendations. A lot of it was focusing around having industry support testing and evaluation of results and experiments, and one of the others was having more industry people kind of submit papers to conferences, specifically the industry tracks of conferences like SIGMOD or VLDB. So it's been a year, right? We've attempted to do some collaboration. A bunch of people have worked together. So maybe we should start by saying, like, what do you think went really well, and what would you have liked to see more of? So maybe we'll start with Jordan.
What went really well and what I'd like to see more of? Well, I will leave our work aside for a second. I think Sync-Free, I'm pretty impressed, especially seeing your guys' talk yesterday and how closely everyone has been working together, and the feedback loop there, I think, is to be taking work and problems from industry and immediately doing research on them and bringing that back into testing it in practice again, I think is really awesome. And then more short term, as Joao and I work together, the ability to get together and really talk about our ideas. We think about a lot of the same problems, but we look at them from different perspectives. I think that's been really crucial as we've moved forward with the work we did in RICON.
Annette?
Yeah, so I've been previously engaged in projects where industrial partners were partnering up together with academic partners in order to get something done. And what I've seen in the last year with the Sync-Free project is really amazing. So it's the first time that this feedback loop, like this immediate feedback within hours, days, was established, and that's something that's very unique, I think. So what happens very often is that you have a cool idea, and then you find some company that might be interested in doing this, but by the time of funding is found and so on, industry interests might have shifted, and it's then very hard to get reliable partners within industry to cooperate with. And with Basho, I think, and also Trifork and Rovio, the other partners in Sync-Free, we're very, very lucky there. And I hope that the results that we're getting out there, it's integrated into RIAC at least to a certain point. And I hope this is inspiring more industries to search for this kind of cooperation.
David?
So I think the one thing that's really great that's happened in the past year is the Papers We Love has started, which is sort of a group of, it tends to be some academics and some people from industry reading papers that they really enjoy and kind of bringing more of the discussion of a lot of these academic concepts and kind of bringing broader exposure to them, which really has the possibility to disseminate those ideas. I do think something that could be better, echoing your sentiments, is that the timelines for academia and industry are really challenging. And I know like that we've tried to and are still trying to work with various research groups at universities to try to figure out how we can work on commercializing their research or integrating it into the work that we're doing. But just with things like the dissertation cycle really can kind of make this really challenging because the people who are working on it in academia don't have the same kind of timeline as the companies.
I have to start by echoing a bit the opinion on projects like SyncFree, because like these working on concrete problems together in like this closed loop really has the potential to make the efforts between academia and industry to be fruitful and really visible. But it's all about communication. It's like any distributed system, right? So I think there should be some pressure on academics to make their solutions as understandable as possible, maybe providing prototypes of their research so that people can easily pick them, understand them, and put them to production. And also from industry to be like Basho is doing a great job on this front, being public about their problems, what they are doing, what they are using, and everything. So it's all about communication. I think we are doing like very nice steps in that direction. I think my work with Jordan is actually one good example also.
Excellent. So one of the suggestions last year was this idea that more industry partners should submit talks to industry tracks at these conferences like VLDB, for instance. And you can kind of look at it two ways. It's saying, well, we should kind of talk about the putting things into practice and what we're doing, in production in industry, and kind of get this into this track. But another way you could look at it is that why aren't those talks in the main tracks of these conferences, right? And they're focusing mainly on novel research, and having an industry track might send the wrong impression by kind of pushing that work separately. So I guess a question I'll pose to the panel is, how do you feel about that, and what approaches do you think might be a bit more productive to kind of get a better, have a bit more confluence between the two groups? So, Jordan?
Sorry, with me again. Not an easy question. I agree with you for the most part. I think it bothers me to have a separate track. I think if you think about RICON, we had a wide range of talks here, and if we separated it, it would have been very different. I think the mix not only brings the audience together and forces people to speak in a different way, but it makes for a much more interesting event. So I think, sort of also going back to the previous question a little bit, in industry talks becoming a forefront thing in academia, while academia talks and things like papers we love are becoming a forefront in industry, I'd like to sort of see that balance. So I think we should make it the same track.
Well, I have a bit more mixed feeling about this. Maybe having the talks not separated is a good thing, but the review process, it's hard for academics to compete with evaluation done in industry, because we simply just don't have the means to deploy real products to real customers and get all these information, all these traces and problems back. So if industry papers are evaluated against the same measures as academic papers, it's sometimes tough. So I don't have objections mixing talks, but mixing review, it's difficult. Also, industry people very often don't have the time to sit down and get all the theory right, and this might also be a valuable thing you get out of academia. So where do you draw the line? It's difficult.
David?
I think that's something that I've observed both like at Two Sigma and then through friends at Google and Twitter, is that all of these companies are doing projects that are like working on interesting things in compilers and in replication and distributed databases, storing different types of information. But the thing is that when you start getting into the novel research that industry is doing, generally the companies believe this is the thing that makes them competitive and prevents some startup from taking their slice of the pie. And so I think that figuring out a way for industry participants to be able to publish the work that they're doing without giving away so much that somebody else could replicate their work in such a way that would cause them, a financial impact, would create an incentive that would make more of this kind of private research get released out to the public. So,
well, I agree with you that I don't see the need for having like a separate track or session or whatever for industry. And this actually happens in many conferences, actually, at least in the systems community, well, academia and industry are actually together there. But I think that the right direction to go there is really to have papers being submitted by academics and people from industry together. And then this question no longer exists, right?
Right.
If everyone is working on the same thing together, then I think this is the best way to go to overcome this problem.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the audience before we move on? Just raise your hand and we'll bring you a mic. Yeah? That's fine. We have time for you, Inez.
Okay. All right, so, I guess, okay, cool. So, I would like to ask like 3 questions and they're very different as well. So, first, how do you find each other? So how did this project started where like you guys from Basho found them and then they found you and then you had like this like beautiful symbiosis, but like how do you know of each other?
Accident.
Okay, that was a good question.
So the full story behind the React 2.0 work is Joe Blomstedt, who's not here, wrote basically a large essay about where he saw the future of React going, and in there he had came across Joao's work. And 2 years later, I started at Basho, and I read this thing, and I read Joao's papers, and I started working on part of it, and I implemented it. And then I'll let you tell what happened when you saw the video.
So how should I address this? How public should I be about what really happened? So okay, I'll be very public. So I'm sort of involved in this Sync-Free project, but I've been mostly an observer there. So at some point, I was in the mailing list of the project, and I think the work that Jordan was doing in React was discussed at some meeting, and someone sent an email to the mailing list with a video presentation of Jordan. And I was late at night, I was very tired. I should explain this before. I was very, very tired at that point. And I saw this email and I thought, well, I'll gossip, let me check it. And I was started to see Jordan's talk, and he was like, yeah, I'll gossip and everything, and then we used trees, and I thought, well, this guy's reinventing the wheel, we already did that. And then at some point, he mentions the name of the protocol, Plum Tree, and I swear this is true. Like, my first reaction was, what, they did the same thing and used the same name? What are the odds of it?
So I think the answer to your question is we need better ways to find each other.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was going to go back to also, to say about what I think is exciting about the work right now is I don't want to see us do this thing where they're writing papers and 20, 30 years later we're rediscovering them. And so I think if we can find a way to match us up sooner, we need that. But it's missing right now.
So I think there's another thing also that we've been doing at Two Sigma, which is a combination of hiring researchers to work at the company and sort of just either be consulting like part-time or even full-time, kind of disseminating the knowledge they have. And the other thing that we've been doing is like, so we're in New York and we're like literally 3 blocks from NYU and like, 20-minute subway ride from Columbia. And so through some of these researchers that we've hired, then they're on all the mailing lists for NYU and Columbia, and then they send out internal emails saying like, hey, your team is working on, networking problems, and there's this talk on like more efficient networks going on over here, you should check it out. And through that, there's actually one project even that we've like particularly focused on and like, has the potential even to do that. So I think that, this also applies to people in San Francisco and Chicago. There's universities nearby, they're having talks. They don't lock the door if you're not a member of the university. Like, you can just show up and check it out, and maybe it'll be useful.
Berkeley hosts some really great talks in the Bay Area, for example.
Okay, cool. So my next question. What are like so that we have academia and then like once in a while industry and academia like would get together and then work together and collaborate. But I was wondering about the ethical implications of like commercializing research work. How does that work? I mean, like, is there an advantage for researchers that get paid like maybe 30 grand a year in America with like almost nothing else, and then somebody else commercializing into something, a product that they sell? So is there a problem with that, or is it like another reason that is?
I can pick that up. Well, for me, this is like a no problem really, because my perspective on doing research and science in general is that as soon as I publish a paper with some result, this is in the public domain. Yeah. So for me, this is like no issue at all. If someone goes up and picks my research, as Jordan did, and use it in the real world, I'm happy about it. I'm really happy about it. And if I can do something to help people to do that more often, then I'm all for it. So for me, this is really no problem.
So have these insights into industry helped you? Like, have they changed any of your assumptions once you start seeing it in the wild?
Yes, a bit.
Yeah, so yeah.
But I don't know if the other members want to.
Well, I mean, one thing is also there are a lot of students or like PhDs involved in doing the research, and not everybody wants to stay or can stay in academia. So I'm actually very happy when we have companies that we can collaborate with, and people already hook up, and it's also good for the companies, right? If you have if you get a person that knows already something about your product and about some corner cases and so on about technology, and you can hire him directly, maybe after the degree or something. It's a cooperation, right? So
then are you saying that it's the role of universities to also start seeking out partners more aggressively and to make sure, shouldn't academic institutions help you more?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it's at some point it's about trust, right? So you need to open your door, especially as industry, to have people coming in and seeing what you're doing. And some companies don't feel very, very good about that, right? They're afraid that secrets may get out, and I don't know what. It's difficult. So we are trying to establish contact. So I know that at my university we have even a special kind of group where industry can kind of sign up, and paying with like a little fee. It's possible to have scholarships running and so on, and they can really interact with the students, and it's actually quite nice, and has a great impact on our faculty even.
I think another way that I've seen this happen, like particularly a lot of the Microsoft research publications, is that like you guys mentioned, if as a researcher you might not have a big paycheck, but there's the summer season, particularly for PhD students, where this is a great time to take internships. And so there's a lot of companies that have some kind of research focus, or maybe you scope out a talk during one of your jaunts over to Berkeley or NYU, and then you say, oh hey, maybe let's get one of the PhD students working on this as an intern, and then they can benefit by getting industry experience and some more spent money for the rest of the year, and the companies can benefit by getting that academic crossover and being able to leverage the knowledge of the people actually working on the system rather than just reading the paper.
I have the last point, and then I will stop hogging the mic.
No, it's fine.
So I belong to the group that helps with the Papers We Love organization, and I think that one of the challenges, at least for me, has been the curation of different aspects has been problematic, because we don't have a lot of domain expertise on some of the areas of papers, and then that would be very helpful to get help from people in general about if you know about distributed systems, just rank us, or just even put an issue with the papers or something. I think that this is a problem that we're trying to solve as well, because we don't really know how to curate this type of content. We have a ton of papers that are out there that they require, or if there's this I guess we don't know how to parse them as well in a way. So what we're doing is we're getting really good speakers, and then the speakers help us with this the background, but as a repo and as a way that other people are accessing, and obviously they have interest in. We are still lacking in the sense of curation, and also just even guided tours. It's if you want to know this is seminal work and you should parse it in this way. We don't have that, so it would be very nice if we get more help on that situation. So that's all.
Anybody have any comments on that?
My past, I agree.
I think there's one extra thing you can do, which is that I think Google Scholar has citation counts, and so particularly for seminal works, this doesn't tell you really anything about whether a new new paper is garbage or going to revolutionize things. But I mean, particularly for seminal works, you see thousands or tens of thousands of citations, and clearly there's something special about this one, because not every paper is getting that many citations.
So I mean, academia is it's possible to track and know about seminal papers, sure, but to keep track of research that's going on, we are very often in exactly the same situation, right? You go to the conference and you learn about that work, but every conference you don't go to, there might be something that you missed. So I mean, we're also chatting among each other, having mailing lists where things get disseminated. So we're using these kind of channels. But the problem is it would be actually nice to have more overview papers that put things more into context. But these are typically the papers that don't give you cutting-edge research, and it takes time to sit down and parse through all these papers and find out how to put them into relation.
I guess following up two things. First, citations, both I completely agree with you. Also, the other direction of following citations, I think, is a great way to dive deeper into a subject. And then I guess to your question, I agree with that, but I guess the question I'd have is, every paper almost always has a related work section. Is that, is it pretty ad hoc when you're writing papers that you, like Carlos is working on CRDT, he has a process for going back and finding the seminal paper or something like that, or is it very much luck, I guess, for lack of, Is my question making sense?
I think Max, yeah, but well, in relation to that, when you're working in some topic, it is expected that you sort of try to domain everything on that topic before you start doing something. Otherwise, you might be reinventing the wheel, and sometimes this happens, and even sometimes it gets published. But which is true. But and so there's no magical technique to get this right. We just expect that you spend enough time reading, talking to people. Talking to people is really, really important. And I think to know what are the relevant works and know about new works that just emerged in your field, you just have to be in constant communication with people that are working along the same lines as you. And so I think we have the same problem that you were describing. If you reach out to us, we are clearly understanding that you have this problem, and we will be able to help you or whatever it fits our topics. We see.
Okay. Are there another question? Yep.
Really quick before, just to change subjects, I just want to, we should all give a quick round of applause to all the papers we love people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So I have one question and one comment. So my question is, every day I know there are hundreds of problems that I know about, that I know that I have, and then there are probably hundreds of problems that I have no clue that they exist in my system. How do I know which one of those problems would be interesting for a partnership with academia?
That's a tricky
Annette
one.
or Joao?
Yeah, so in academia, just as an industry, there are trends, right? So there was this, eventual consistency, which is probably still a really running trend. Maybe we don't know what's happening there. Then have this big data trend and these other things. So if you're surfing on that wave, you probably are working on some interesting problem. For us, it's it's sometimes hard to see from the outside. So I've seen here some really interesting talks on how to configure things, how to set up systems reliably and nicely working and so on. That's probably nothing industry is really worried about, because academia is really worried about, because industry finds some way of working around this. So it normally gets interesting, at least from my perspective, if some theory is involved. So you're hitting kind of a point where you don't know how to engineer around that. And it might be that it's really just impossible, or that it's very hard. And these are, I guess, the questions that are interesting for industry. But again, you kind of have to open your door, invite some person, start talking to them, be honest about what you can do, what you can't do, and have to see.
Yeah. I would say, for any problem that you have, that there would be at least one person in the world in academia that is interested in that problem, how do you find that person? Well, Google might help you, actually, because, we all tend to have these home pages where we explain what we are doing, and so if you do the right Google query, you might get the right hit. But then I could also turn the question on the other side, right? I'm doing this research because I have this model of the world, which might not fit perfect reality, but and how do I know which are the guys in the industry that have the problem where my solution fits, right? It's really trying to communicate and be as open and as possible about what you're doing, what are the problems you're tackling, what are the problems that you have, and trying to find the matches.
So one thing that we try to do is, when we have some kind of problem that we're like, oh man, this is really hard, and it's it's valuable to us, is, and it's not an obvious thing to engineer around, where you just throw Hadoop at it and it goes away. When you have that kind of problem, what we end up doing is looking for papers, and then we do this reference following, right, where we find a paper that seems to address it, and then we start looking at all its references and related work and who's citing that paper, and we kind of go through this, and maybe after 10 or 15 papers, which takes a day to skim or something, then now you have some idea about the lay of the land. and you can get an idea about maybe who are the main researchers in this or something like that, and you can start emailing them. And I found it's really easy. Like any researcher is more than happy to like take a phone call or have an email thread discussing like your problem. And then from there, you can discuss with them and figure out, is this something that's really interesting, or are they just like, oh yeah, 2 years ago, like SIGPlan 09, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, following up on that, I just want to say, like, email the researcher and talk to them. I think it was, just because Joao wrote this paper, it's like, oh, this ominous name on a page. And then we actually met, and I was like, he's not going to care, right? And it's been, I mean, for both of us, it's been wonderful.
Right.
And so it's really just, I mean, I think, it's beating the same horse, but communication is really key.
So my comment was, David has mentioned NYU and Columbia. Also, New York is the Cornell Tech campus. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it's, like it's an example of an institution that's being designed for collaboration. So.
Cool. Any other questions from anybody? It's really hard to see up here with these bright lights.
Hi. Just another tool. I think lots of us are using Twitter for this. So we have lots of academics and lots of people from the industry that are starting to use Twitter for social and professional reasons. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good way of finding, because it's a broadcast medium. So I have a given problem, I say this, and if I have people that follow me because they are related to the problems that interest me, even if it's not within one hop, often within 2 hops we are finding someone that will be closer to that problem. And that is very bidirectional. It can start from the academia or from the industry, and I think it works very well.
The first time we spoke was in Twitter.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we really didn't start speaking until we became friends on Twitter.
Yeah, true.
There should be a big thanks to Russell, because the part of the story we left out is that Russell flew to Braga to meet with Carlos and ended up in the co-author's office.
One of my co-authors shares an office with Carlos. Yeah, the world is really small.
Anybody else?
So you've talked about collaboration, but can you comment on the conflict of interest more explicitly between academia and industry and how you could work towards bridging that gap?
So I think that's somewhat related to Inez's question, right, of is there can industry affect academia in a way that's not positive or something like that? And I'm struggling I see it in the sciences in general, but I'm struggling to materialize it in computer science, if only because while we build things that are valuable, they're indirectly valuable, and usually that is where the conflict of interest tends to arise. Like, for example, I wouldn't want to see, for example, academia and industry partnering on benchmarks of NoSQL databases where Basho was one of those partners, right? Because there's a clear conflict of interest there, but I'm finding a hard time finding other counterexamples, but maybe you two have other ones.
I can provide you a very concrete counterexample. So, so to Sigma, we're doing a lot of trading activities, and there are certain types of data access patterns that, if we could accelerate them, then we would make a lot more money. And so the problem is that, if we had a researcher and we're like, oh hey, come here, work on this and stuff, and then it turns out that this is like insanely profitable, then if other companies knew this, they could do the same thing. So I mean, this is definitely a challenge, is figuring out how to make everybody involved in the process comfortable with the idea that that the research will be released. Because particularly as you get away from infrastructure providers to end user companies, like the big enterprises like Google and Twitter, that are they are the full stack of their development. There it becomes much more subtle. Like Google doesn't open source any of their stuff. Maybe they or most of it.
And we have some very big open source people, but they're low-level infrastructure projects.
Right. I mean, but MapReduce is not open source, and so maybe if they hire researchers to enhance MapReduce, maybe they write a paper, maybe they don't. Maybe it turns out it's so profitable or advantageous for them that they don't even want to write the paper.
So I see that. I guess I interpreted the question differently, which is I understand why a researcher may be hesitant to start, right? Because the work may never get published because of that reason, and I agree with that. I guess I interpreted the question as will industry negatively affect published results? in their favor for financial gain. And I'm struggling to find that counterexample again, except for benchmarking.
Yeah, except for benchmarking.
Yeah. Right, but otherwise, I think I definitely agree that there's this challenge for academics where, right, like the company may decide this is proprietary value, information that's of value to us, but I don't see that as necessarily a conflict of interest. I see that as a challenge but we're not degrading the quality of the work for that financial gain. Actually, it would be to your detriment to do that.
Yeah.
So.
And it's definitely a surmountable challenge, I think. So.
Can you wait a second and use the mic just so other people can hear?
So, but don't you think that it's like a matter also like differences of timing? I mean, like in academia, you get a chance to actually go and research and maybe know a problem in depth. And in industry, nobody's going to go and spend like years like analyzing one small thing. And I think there's a lot of value in still actually thinking about problems deeply. But if you're building like your next like ruffle scale architecture to sell like pictures of getting like that doesn't. I think to me that would be like a negative impact of academia, and like shortening the time of research or shortening the amount of like rigor that you can do to develop a point. And I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I likely not, because universities are very good at maintaining their practices. But that would be the thing that is like the. I do not want us to be the type of people that don't invest time thinking deeply about something, because these days mostly we don't.
No, I totally agree. I think that's why Syncfree is a great model, because it does make that separation still between, you know, Chris's role and Annette's role and our role, but
we still get the time to think things through. I mean,
yeah.
even if they get deployed in React, I mean, if I would have some doubts about some data structure, I would continue thinking about this in the background, right? And later come back and say, wait, there's something wrong or so. So we have the time. The only, well, we once were in a project where the company, I mean, we had to sign a thing that said that the companies that were involved in the project wanted to read the paper before it gets published to make sure that, you know, no secrets were released, and, you know, which was okay with us. But, you know, after reading it a second time, it said we had to submit it to the industry partners some 6 weeks before the deadline. And, you know, I'm not sure how the other people in this room are publishing papers, but 6 weeks before the deadline, having the paper ready for, like, reviewing by partners was a bit tough. So we were relaxing that, but...
I'll say 99% of the times it's impossible, but...
yeah.
Well, another thing is that, like, research is... You cannot really speed up research as you wish, right? It's something that takes its time, and getting results, coming up with ideas, testing them, it all takes time, and really you cannot push these like in time, even if you want.
So I think too, I think having multiple people from industry involved instead of one company is another way to sort of spread this, right? Of not letting, for example, our business interests push the research, not only in a direction, but in terms, I think, of your point of cutting it short or something like that. And so I think like, replication is a good thing in all aspects.
Anybody else have a question?
Yes, I do. You know, for somebody who's in industry, I know of a few ways to discover research. If I'm looking for, you know, a better model to represent my data, or a better framework to think about, is there something, or if there isn't, what would be your perceived way of doing that from the other side? So, like, you know, having the bi-directional where researchers can say, oh, well, I think what you're doing could work much better with my model or with my research. Does that exist? If it doesn't, could we make that happen?
Well, the only times that I knew of this happening is when some people from some company like write a blog post explaining what they are doing, right? And if the right keywords are there, we search Google, so we eventually will find it, and then we can sort of say, oh, that's cool, we actually have something here that might be useful to you. But yeah, other than that, which is extremely ad hoc, I don't know of, like, except going to conferences and speaking with people, but other than that, there's no platform where we can do that.
Yeah. I also wouldn't know of any platform. I mean, this would really require opening up, and, you know, in very often a product is a product, right? So
I think right now open source is the only platform we have, right? Because we're not going to open all of our doors to some of the, like, right? Like, I would love if Google opened its doors to some of that information, right? But and I think the other one is, right, companies like Google hire their own researchers.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think we have time for one last question.
Okay, I'll ask a question. I have a question. So my question is, you know, a lot of times you're building on some previous work, so you assume some system model that's outlined and proven in some paper, and then you're trying to build upon that work because you don't want to reinvent what's already been done, right? But then you also want to test it at scale in some like industry setting. You know, so what are the ideas there? Because a lot of times you'll never find an industry partner who necessarily has that exact system model or is built exactly that way. But your research kind of doesn't want to reinvent that or build, or you know, you want to build upon that, or your contribution is not novel. So kind of, what do you think are better ways that we can kind of, you know, bridge that gap, I guess?
I think that I think the answer is always the same, so sort of. It's improved communication, right? If I'm aware of all the pains and hassles that people from industry are getting, then I can build the model that fits that reality. And as soon as I have that model, I can work on top of it, right? So I think that it's all about, again, communication. Like if I get this information in time, then I will for sure adapt my research to those models.
So I have kind of a snarky answer and then a real one. My snarky answer was the academics should pick the strictest model, and then that way everything we build will be okay within the weaker models. But I don't agree with that. You know, I think one of the things that's hard is translating the system model to industry. Which system models match TCP, which match UDP, aren't something that I feel the community in industry has as an intuitive idea about. And so I guess just focusing on the system model in general, and like I like Joao's paper a lot because he assumes a weaker model and has TCP, but in almost every application in the real world we do, and it enabled some really cool research that yes we've extended, but at the time that wasn't his focus. And so yeah, I think like we don't even necessarily have the best tools to communicate our system model to academia right now. That we need to start there first.
I think there's another thing that could be done, which is that you know, in industry it's pretty common. Like for, you know, some vendor, they're shopping around their product to potential customers, and they're going out to, you know, however they figure this out. And when they're shopping it around, the customer is like, oh, I really, you know, I can only buy from you if you give me feature X. Like I really need this thing, it's important. And the vendor's like, oh yeah, no problem, we can do that. And then they come back and they're like, oh geez, how do we do this? You know, I think that this same model, like, you know, it could be possible to run a research lab where, you know, if the PI or if some of the grad students are willing to take on, you know, essentially shopping their research around, you know, this is something that they could do even by going to, you know, industry conferences or getting a booth or something. And they could try to shop around their research and try to get, you know, customers of their research in sort of the same outreach mechanism. And when they say, oh yeah, I'd love to use your, like, you know, your ideas and stuff, but it really doesn't apply because of reason X, or we really needed to do this other thing, you know, that's another, you know, the same sales, like if researchers tried to sell their research not for money but just for uptake, then the similar like model could result in like more feedback of some of the quirks of industry environments.
Well, I mean, selling products or like research products, so to say, can be very tough. So, I mean, within the scope of our project, what we discovered, I mean, what academia often tries to do is simplify things. So, one simplification that we often do, like in initial stages at least, assume that, you know, systems don't fail, right? So we have a very...
You get to live on Terra temporarily, basically?
Exactly, yeah, and this is a very nice world, you know, and it's really great. So if you want to have speed up, you kind of disable disk writes, and it works perfect, and your benchmarks suddenly look much, much better, right? But then we can go back and, you know, show, I don't know, we often show to Chris our stuff, and then he's like, oh my god, but, you know, this won't work in any real-time setting, so... yeah, so being stricter than needed, it's hard in system setting. Right?
Agreed. Yeah, totally agreed.
So then we will end up with some very, very restrictive system, and it won't fit your model.
FLP.
I think that's another aspect that we sometimes use simpler models for allowing us to expose the results and the solution in a clear way.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to address all these corner cases. It doesn't mean that we don't know how to address them or to solve them, but we assume that anyone that wants to enrich that model will figure out that there's an obvious solution for that. But then the exposition of what we did is much, much improved if we can avoid addressing all those corner cases and really focus on the main results and contributions.
But this requires the partners involved to see that and value this. I mean, if you look at a model and your first reaction is, it does not have fault tolerance, it does not have partition tolerance or some, sharding or something else, and you put it directly away, then you're not getting anything out of that. So.
But I think also that even in industry, that doesn't always matter. Like take Redis, it's super popular, successful, like really good at what it does. And as far as distributed rigor, it's not there, but it's not really built for that. And I think, that even, when you're like, I'm going to build this thing, and also if your machine loses power, then you lose all your data and you go out of business. Like there's plenty of commercial products that have that property. It's not like...
They're also getting slowly bit by it, but good enough has always been, right? What's that? Good enough has always been good in industry, right? That's why we have Linux instead of a Lumos. I will say though, Annette sort of said something, which is part of this is also on us, that we can't expect that academia will solve it for every system model or for the same problem. Like actually Joao's solution was in a totally different space, right? It's on us to, I think I said in my talk, it's not a recipe, it's not the blueprint for how I build my code. It's, a direction, it's a sign kind of in the right way. And you as the practitioner, it's your job to take research and implement it. And so I think part of that's just about us and adapting. Can you adapt the system model? Can you understand and have enough intuition about the research to change the algorithm to meet your needs?
Okay, so we're out of time. So a big round of applause for our panel. And thank you very much.